Welcome to Psychology at Work. I'm Dr. Paul Brewerton, otherwise known as the Strengths Guy. As a doctor of psychology and the founder and chair of Strengthscope, I'm here to share my insights with you. Tune in for a regular dose of positive, strengths-based content. My podcasts are packed full of tips and tools designed to enhance your world of work. Ready to dive into the good stuff in this episode? Then let's go. Hi, my name's Dr. Paul Brewerton, the Strengths Guy, Doctor of Organisational Psychology, Chartered Occupational Psychologist, founder and chair of Strengthscope. And I'm always excited to meet guests, but I'm particularly excited and anticipatory about meeting today's guest because it is our very own, and I mean Strengthscope's very own, Head of Training and Integration, Mr. Scott Christie, who's with us today. Hello, Scott.
Hello, Paul. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for making the time. Yeah, let's just get into it because I'm really excited to talk about today's topic. So, if you are interested in hearing a bit more about Scott's career story, that is elsewhere. If you're interested in that, you can search for, what was it called? Maximize Your Adaptability Quotient,
Yeah,
I
it was along
believe.
those lines. Yeah, that was the previous
Amazing,
conversation.
amazing title, an amazing podcast where you get much more into your own career story, background around strengths, etc. So if you want to head over to the Strengthscope website, check on the resources section, probably just tap in something like adaptability quotient and Scott will pop up and you can hear more from him there. But we don't want to talk about AQ today much, although it may come up. It
Yeah,
may kind of come up because there's something around strengths being helpful in helping us to adapt. But
right.
mainly today, we're going to talk about a really important topic that comes up for us a lot in talking to clients, to partners, and it's the idea of strengths versus skills.
Mm,
So is it strengths or is it skills that are going to be more important when we think about the future world of work and the future workforce? And even now, actually,
right.
forgetting about the future. So first of all, like what are strengths? How are they different from skills? Can you have one without the other? And I know, Scott, you did a topic, a talk on this at Main Conference CIPD. So
Mm.
that's the flagship HR annual conference and exhibition that's run in the UK, right? Not so long ago, only a few months back. So I think let's just jump straight into it and just start that conversation. Yeah, if you're good for that.
Yeah, fantastic. Um,
Cool. Yeah.
I think the first thing, like you said, is what's the difference between strengths and skills?
Yeah.
And for anybody that doesn't know our definition of strengths from a strength scope lens, it's underlying qualities that energize you and you're great at or have the potential to be great at.
Yeah.
And that energize thing is a key thing. It's a constant conversation that myself and many of the other strength scope team have with clients is, so what's the difference? A lot of people will naturally see strengths as things that they're good at.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, well, yes, and strengths are also the things that energize you, motivate you,
Mm,
drive you, the
mm,
things that make you jump out of bed in the morning rather than
mhm,
hit snooze.
mhm.
So I can do work in Excel, do pivot tables, pivot charts. I can still just about remember how to do VLOOKUPs and stuff like that. Does that make me jump out of bed in the morning? No, it doesn't, but it's a skill that I've developed that I needed in my career.
Mm, mhm,
Whereas the strengths I have, because they are these underlying qualities, are things that come far more naturally to me.
mm,
And for me, have been the fastest opportunity growth areas
mhm.
in my skills development as well, because I enjoy and love it so much.
That's really interesting, right? So you just mentioned a whole bunch of technical Excel related skills, um, but also strengths that really get you out of bed in the morning and, like make you want to come to work and, maybe you know, provide the greatest areas for your development. So I guess there's a question for me around, could you just mention a strength or two that has that effect for you? Um, and also I wonder, did you use your strengths in order to be able to train yourself to do the Excel thing? Because I think that like that can help too, right? Just to locate strengths in the same way that you've done really concretely with skills.
Yeah. So to answer kind of both questions at the
Yeah.
same time, when I was learning Excel, I didn't know what my strengths were.
Mhm.
As I'm able to reflect on what strengths might have driven me to make the effort and the time, to be able to do that, as well as thinking about how it's going to help my job.
Yeah.
I have self-improvement as a strength. So
Yeah.
that's about drawing on a wide range of people and resources and getting energized by that in order to be able to continue my development. And particularly at the time that I remember doing the Excel training was just after I'd started a new role, doing some kind of working for a lead generation company. And I was wanting to try and put data together to tell stories. And I guess that's the thing that was the why I did it. Why was I interested in developing this? What drove me through it, what gave me energy to do it, was I wanted to be able to kind of increase my understanding and knowledge to be able to tell the stories that I felt were important for the business to understand. The danger comes when people mistake skills for strengths. So quite often, particularly as I was learning, I'd have two monitors and they'd have Excel sheets up in front of them. And people thought, oh, he loves Excel, well, let's send him more of that. Actually, that wasn't what I loved. I didn't love doing the reporting. I didn't love, you know, working out how to make it work. The amount of times that I was having to go back and redo it, it took me ages. That's why those sheets were up there all the time.
Yeah.
I wasn't naturally skilled at it. Whereas somebody else, perhaps, that has, say, for example, a strength that I don't have in detail orientation, might find that they're more natural at being able to set things up really, really well. Or they might have the likes of critical thinking to be able to keep it objective, for example. Strengths really are so personal as well that any number of things can drive people to develop the skills that they need in order to adapt to the role they have. And as you said, I'm not going to go into my career, but it's been squiggly. I think we can safely say that. I've had a number of different kinds of roles. And it's about being able to kind of go, how have my strengths and how now can I intentionally use my strengths in order to be successful in the role that I'm inhabiting?
Yeah, right. And I guess in a way you're answering my next question, which is strengths versus skills or strengths and skills. Is it either or is it and? Yeah, I'm really keen to get your views, your perspective on that.
Yeah, I guess that there's a lot of conversation right now about skills development in particular. I see it all over the likes of LinkedIn. There's lots and lots of white papers and downloads talking about the skills revolution and stuff like that. I guess the talk that you mentioned that I did back in November at the CIPD annual conference and exhibition was really about looking at this changed world of work. You know, it will continually change, but the world of work has fundamentally changed, and I don't think it's ever going to go back to where it was pre-pandemic. And I think that the likes of remote and flexible working has led to a different kind of skill set being needed by leaders, for example. But one of the other big noise things that's going on just now is AI. And everybody's talking about reskilling. And IBM, I quoted this in the talk, IBM did some research and they found that 40% of roles of the executives that they surveyed are going to need some sort of reskilling as a result of AI now and in the future. And to give you kind of the big picture of that, essentially, if you're going to go by World Bank statistics, that's 1.4 billion people out of the 3.4 billion people in the workforce. Will need to reskill as a result of AI.
Wow.
It's being said. Now, I think that the thing is that sometimes, like a lot of news as well, people will kind of go to the extreme and go, all right, well, the stuff that I'm doing now, the robots are going to take over and I'm going to have to do something completely new. But I don't think it's necessarily as hugely transformational as that. I think that what we'll find is AI will take away the repetitive, more boring, busy tasks. And hopefully what then that creates space for is more of that individual, independent human experience to be able to come in. And I think that that's where strengths comes in. So being able to kind of look at how you are naturally energized, make conscious and intentional choices to be able to deal with the constant change that happens in your roles, in your organizations,
Mm.
to be able to kind of build that energetic resilience to
Mm-hmm.
some of that, but
Mm-hmm.
also use those kind of really important human traits around innovation, particularly around your own performance as
Mm.
well. So I think it is and I think there's going to be skills that are needed to be able to manage new aspects of work, as there always are,
Mm.
particularly in this technological age. We look back in the past 30, 40 years,
Mm.
the skills that were needed then compared to the skills that are needed now are
Mm.
chalk and cheese.
Mm.
That I think is going to continue. But where the strengths come in is, I think, the blind spot for particularly a lot of L&D in
Mm.
terms of how they're going to be able to develop their people.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I'm keen again to get concrete on this, right, and ground it. So practically, how does it work?
Mm-hmm.
So say I'm an accountant, right? So it, I was going to say it's simple for me. It's simple for me to pick um, a skill-based job qualification, not necessarily to get it. That's really hard. Um, but to pick and to go down a professional skill acquisition route in order to get a qualification that's recognized and it's transferable across the industry
Mm-hmm.
of accountancy and across all industries, because accountants pop up everywhere.
Yeah.
So we should still do that? Or is it the strengths that are like the how and the qualification is the what? Is that the way the and works in practice? I'm keen to get a bit more granular on the strengths
Mm-hmm.
part, I guess.
So I think there's a couple of different levels for this. I think that where you have the likes of accountancy, where there's kind of like chartership and stuff like that,
Mm.
that shows your skill and experience level.
Hmm.
I think that that will continue to be something that both individuals and organizations will look for as a kind of a level of trust
Mm.
of the kind of skills that you're bringing into an organization. I think it'll be interesting because I think aspects of each job is where the skill will fit. Um, After the CIPD annual conference in November, I was then invited to do a couple of talking gigs in Manchester again
Hmm.
for their local CIPD branch.
Hmm.
And I was basically around hot topics in L&D, and
Mm.
unsurprisingly, AI came up as one of the hot topics that we wanted to talk about. And I did a poll in the room about the kind of skills and the kind of tasks that they expect AI to replace,
Mm.
essentially. And unsurprisingly, around the top was research and analytical skills.
Hmm.
And then after that, I showed them a slide which showed LinkedIn's top 10 skills to develop in 2024.
Mm.
Guess what was in the top 10? Research and analytics.
Mm.
But this is the challenge that people are facing,
Mm.
that there are these skills that are needed right now,
Hmm.
but that are also under threat from AI. So it's about
Hmm.
being able to think about how you broaden how
Yeah.
you approach your opportunities to perform at work. And
Yeah.
I think that that's where being able to think about, okay, how do we future proof our development?
Yeah.
And particularly one of the other things that came up about employee retention, and
Hmm.
not just people jumping ship to some other companies, but doing massive career pivots.
Hmm.
Going, actually, if the pandemic's taught me anything, it's that maybe I'm an accountant because that's where my skills are. But what
Hmm.
I really want to do is
Hmm.
something completely different because
Hmm.
that's the thing that makes my heart sing.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
totally.
and being able to understand how you can leverage some of the skills of being an accountant into a completely different kind of role with
Mm.
different kinds of outcomes is a really powerful place to be.
Mm.
But I think that certainly from my experience and from the experience that I see in terms of clients that have really good success with this,
Hmm.
is being able to kind of go, okay, so what are the outcomes that you're looking to achieve?
Hmm.
And then what are the skills and the strengths that
Hmm.
you can bring together, you personally? We're not going to
Mm.
map this for you. We're not going to say this is the things, these are the strengths that you're going to have
Mm.
allied to the skills, because we don't know how your creativity strength might come out. That's
Right.
about innovation and problem solving, and talk about something that can be incredibly wide and come from
Hmm.
different places.
Hmm.
So I think that that's the thing that we've got to recognize, that there's going to be some skills, hard skills, like
Mm.
the word. I don't like the hard skills, soft skills. That's a personal thing. But as people would understand, hard skills that will be replaced by
Mm.
technology, by
Mm.
AI, for example, in the next 3 to 4 years.
Mm.
So you've got to think about how you, as an individual, can flex to some of those challenges and yet still
Mm.
stay kind of true and authentic to yourself, which again comes through the strengths.
Yeah. So as you were talking then, I don't know if you and I have ever talked about this. Why
Mm,
would we have? But we may have. I can't remember. So I did a piece of work years ago with a bank, and there was about, I think in total probably 100 analysts who
mm,
were involved in this piece of work, right? And they were always separated to different teams. Um, so there's 100 of them. They all did Strengthscope. They all had critical thinking as one of their top three strengths that they self-selected, right? Without knowing
mm,
that other people had also picked that strength. Sorry, I've got a horrible frog in my throat. Um, and they picked other strengths too as their secondary strengths.
sure.
Their task is, I'm an analyst, so I break things down. I try and figure out how it works. I model statistically to to try and predict the future in some way.
Mm,
Macroeconomic, microeconomic changes, etc. How's that going to affect the bank's policies or the bank's approach? Um, but what they hadn't appreciated, and if you think about this from a role perspective, right? I'm an analyst. I am the role. I do
mm,
stats. I do it well. I'm able to, model statistically. What they hadn't considered is the how part around how they do that differently.
yeah,
And each of these teams and each of these groups of people and each individual had a different subset, a different subtask to deliver. But they all, without realizing it until they'd had that Strengthscope experience, didn't realize how they were going about it in very different ways. So some of them had decisiveness strengths. So they were kind of just like, making quick decisions about how are we going to statistically model this and then let's move on. Others had relationship building strengths. They were actually reaching out across teams in order
mm,
to gather more information. Some were doing teach outs into the team when they would go out, they'd go on a training because they're developing other strengths. And until they had the language, they all were thinking of themselves as the role, but they weren't thinking of themselves as humans within the role who could go about delivering the skills of that role in very different ways. And when there's another layer here, right, around complementarity within teams,
yeah,
but even just me on my own, if I know my strengths and I know what I have to do, there's an opportunity to role craft to an extent,
mm,
probably, within the boundaries and the outcomes that I'm there to achieve. I can do it in very, very different ways. And I think when you add the other layer of my colleagues or colleagues that are in other teams elsewhere, it then becomes really powerful because then you can really think about how can we go about delivering this work in very different ways to what we've done in the past. And I think with the advent of AI or AI becoming more prominent, that's even more important because it's the human part that's really gonna, we're gonna need to double down on in the workplace if we're gonna avoid the existential crisis that is incoming.
yeah. I totally hear you with that, and I think that if I think about a couple of similar examples, right? I was talking to somebody today, no, sorry, yesterday, and they're looking at two different routes they could go down: a business analyst route or a people manager route,
Mm,
and they have the skills and experience to do either.
mm,
But we then looked at their strength scope wheel and saw where
mhm.
they were energized, where they were drained, talked through a couple of contexts, and they were and in the end, I said, which one of these do you actually feel instinctively
Yeah,
you'd want to do?
yeah,
And he said, I'd like to do the people manager one. I'm just like, well, that's the one that you need to be able to go to. And I
yeah.
think that we're in a different kind of age now around career mobility, right?
Mm,
And more people are choosing the careers that they want to do
mm,
and looking for that kind of idea of self fulfillment, the very peak of Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
mm,
right? They're wanting more of that. They want to find belonging in a business. They want to
mm,
find higher levels of something other than just 9 to 5 and a paycheck,
mhm.
you know? So I think that that's again where people recognizing their strengths can be really useful. And talking about roles, the chances are, if they are really dialed into their strengths, they'll choose roles that fit their strengths really naturally.
Mm,
So, unsurprisingly, I've worked with software developers much more in the kind of the thinking and execution clusters,
mhm,
lots of them with high levels of detail orientation, for
mm,
example, because they've got to get into the detail to do the coding, to find the bugs and stuff like that. And if
mhm,
that comes naturally to them,
mhm.
they're going to be more productive rather than somebody that might get drained in that detail
Yeah.
orientation that may be able to use there are other strengths to get there, but it isn't quite so natural.
Yeah.
So I'd still say, I've said for a long time, strengths are role agnostic.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what role you're in, you can look at your strengths and see how you have achieved success in the past
Hmm.
and then kind of replicate that.
Hmm.
Look at that as a way of being able to go, okay, so in the past when I needed to go into detail, what was it that motivated me? So whenever I'm creating training material, for example, I am driven by my strength in developing others.
Mm.
I want this material to create a light bulb moment for someone or
Hmm.
have that possibility at the
Hmm.
very least.
Hmm.
And if I'm going, right, I now need to get into this detail because I know that if something's off, if something looks wrong,
Mm.
spelt wrong, my worst thing is I often type strengths wrong as well, and I have to wait for autocorrect to catch up. That will put people off.
Mm.
And that's what drives me to overcome what could be
Mm.
a potential drainer in detail
Mm.
by leveraging my other strength to give me that focus and
Yeah.
motivation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I love that. And I think that's really important, that kind of use of strengths in that way. The other thing I want to notice is what you said a while back around helping that person you were giving Strengthscope feedback to, helping them by asking them how one role or the other felt to them.
Mm,
And there is something here about the emotional, experiential aspects of strengths. That's not to say that you don't experience skills, of course you do, but
no,
but strengths are different. Strengths are differently experienced, and there is an emotive component to them. So asking somebody, how's that likely to make you feel, is more likely to get them towards that place of calling or passion, or, this is aligned to my values. This is something that I'm going to feel really good about because it's going to give me some sort of superordinate purpose, or because that
mm,
would be values related, right? Or because it's just going to make me feel amazing.
yeah,
Delivering on a skill could do that, but delivering using a strength is definitely going to give you that. And that's really the strength tell. If
yeah.
it is giving you that feeling of passion or energy or enthusiasm, you've keyed into it, right? You found it.
And you might naturally be doing it anyway. I think that that's the other thing to work
People do,
to look
right?
out for.
Yeah.
So many people, especially those that don't have an understanding of strengths, will be doing this on an unconscious level anyway.
Yes.
They'll be
Yeah.
going, "Oh, that feels good. Oh, that's really interesting."
Yeah.
And then it's about being able to go, "Well, what is it about that that's interesting you?" And I think that that's where, when we're thinking about that skill strengths combination, it is a combination of head and heart.
Mm.
Way, it's that sense of, am I getting excited by doing this,
Mm.
or am I just thinking that this is the right thing to do?
I love that. That head and heart is so helpful here, right? But that's why it's and, because
Yeah, yeah,
you do want to have both of those components aligned or overlapping, to get
yeah,
the most. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, right. Getting practical again.
Mm-hmm.
If we're thinking about our L&D colleagues, right, working in, working with clients in any context, but I was thinking particularly in organizations, and HR professionals as well,
Yeah.
if they like the idea of strengths, because we've just talked about it as being a really essential component of sustainable success, right? But how can you place that in the context, for example, of personal development plans, right? So if we're talking about skills-based development or just personal development in a corporate, like how can you make it more nuts and bolts? How can you make strengths more nuts and bolts practical? Any examples of that?
Um, it's a really great question. And I want to bring it into kind of the current work context, particularly around flexible work.
Mm.
Um, because it's one thing to be able to get everybody in a room.
Hmm.
And I mean, that's my favorite place because that's when you actually see the magic
Mm.
happen. But more and more, people need to self motivate and self drive
Hmm.
in terms of their development. And if you're just saying, here's something online you've got to go and do,
Mm.
if it's not going to connect with something that's going to fulfill you and
Mm.
you, not your role,
Mm.
you're
Mm.
likely to be able to go through it, but are you going to absorb it and be able to apply the learning?
Hmm.
I think that that's where some of that, there's that challenge around accountability and support
Hmm.
for people's development.
Hmm.
In terms of where strengths then kind of come in, it's about recognizing, and again, this was something that I'm getting increasingly passionate about. I kind of
Mm.
came across this in the build up to that talk that we're referencing. Um, And again, from talking to more and more L&D professionals, there's this kind of classic idea that L&D is one and done in businesses. So a
Mm,
manager will say, I need some support for this individual or this team. And that intervention, which is
mm,
often the language that's used, happens, and
mm,
then mystically everything's going to change. Now, I know what it's like when you're working in a fast-paced business. You go into training and you're back in the fast-paced business.
mm,
What are your chances to be able to absorb that? When is that
mm,
ever referenced again in
mm,
a lot of situations as well?
mm,
So I think that if you're going to roll strengths out in your business, recognize that what this is developing and embedding essentially a practice.
mm,
So it's more about building more small incremental habits
mm,
that may be launched by a classroom setting or a
mm,
webinar or something that might be more in person. But it's really about, for me, reflection and preparation. So as an
mm,
individual, I talked about 2 or 3 things about intentionality.
mm,
Am I aware of my strengths? If
mm,
I'm aware of what energizes me and what drains me, how can I make conscious choices about how I go about my day?
mm,
Where are the areas that I know that I'm going to be energized?
mm,
And that's to try and make sure that I'm getting enough of them, but not too much of them that, for example, my strength might go into overdrive.
mm,
It's about recognizing where are the areas where I'm not necessarily going to be energized. How can I balance out with areas and things that I'm doing that will energize me? And so, as well as development, that's building resilience. And what it's leaning into is the classic 70-20-10 model
mm,
of development. You're doing it. So that 70% is about doing it in work.
mm,
And it's about having that intentional practice. You can then talk to other people. You can teach other people. That's a brilliant way
mm,
to be able to develop your understanding of your strengths and really kind of absorb it and understand it in a
mm,
deeper way. So it's really about trying to allow it to be in the flow of work. So if
mm,
somebody was to say, you know what, I'd like to be able to bring strength into my team, there are simple questions you can ask. You can do a strengths check-in at
mm,
the start of the meeting that
mm,
gets people focused on what is the strength they're going to bring to
mm,
achieve the outcome
mm,
that they're trying to do. And so you're really putting it into your context and you're hearing how that person is going to bring it and what that looks like.
mm,
Just by doing that, people will start to naturally absorb and recognize
mm,
when their strengths are really impactful and where there's opportunities to develop those strengths as well, because we operate in the main in a deficient culture.
mm,
So we're looking at what can you not do, put all your efforts into that, rather than going, what are you great at? And what could you then be exceptional at?
mm,
Because then that's about the extra value that you're able to bring.
mm,
I'd rather have a group of people that are exceptional in certain areas rather than a group of all rounders who
mm.
aren't even really great in some
Yeah,
areas as well.
yeah, yeah. Um, I mean, I think you've touched on some of this, but I'm just wondering if we bring it into a real world example of what that might look like. You know, if you're bringing strengths into something like a retail bank, right? Like just as an example,
Mm-hmm.
what would it look like? What could it look like?
Um, I think it looks the same regardless of the organization.
Right.
Um, I think that obviously context is different,
Hmm.
and deeply understanding the context and culture is really really important to make sure it
Hmm.
works.
Hmm.
If you've got a culture that has a growth mindset, that has a strong culture of development, and particularly things like internal succession, for
Hmm.
example, the
Hmm.
chances are strength is going to really work well for you
Hmm.
because it's going to help people understand the difference that they have. The way we always do it is we have to start with the individual. A
Hmm.
lot of people will want to start wider with teams and
Hmm.
organizations.
Hmm.
Where are we all generally getting our energy from? But then that becomes that kind of clouds the individual journey. And
Hmm.
if we're talking about incremental steps and taking people on a journey rather than a one-off intervention,
Hmm.
then that individual has to be willing to kind of go on
Hmm.
that journey. So helping them have that awareness, helping them put that into practice
Hmm.
through some of the simple kind of habit building actions that can be taken, and then it's about taking it to the team
Hmm.
because by that time, hopefully, if they've got that language, and one of the things that when you built Strengthscope, you said was really, really key is a common, understandable language
Hmm.
between each other.
Hmm.
They'll start talking about that. They'll start saying, "Hey, you got creativity. I could do with some help because
Yeah.
I've got to try and come up with a new idea, and right now I'm stuck."
Yeah.
whether I've got creativity or no, I'm not able to do this. Can I call in some of that? I'm completing my training module. I think I've gone through it in detail. Can I get somebody who's detail orientated to look
Mm.
through this? Because it's going to take you 15 minutes rather than taking me an hour,
Mm.
you know? So being able to just do that, you can do that just from the individual level. Then being able to look at a collective level
Mm-hmm.
really allows you to understand, so who are we? What drives us? How
Mm.
can we articulate that across the other teams in our department, our departments in organizations,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to be able to kind of really understand? So when I come and work with, for example, a customer experience team,
Mm.
what is the experience going to be like working with them? What
Mm.
are the things that motivate and drive them?
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm needing some feedback on something, I'll understand where they're coming from far better because they've been able to articulate that to me.
Yeah.
Obviously, then the biggest thing is leaders, because I think that building in visibility to leaders and having that advocacy, having someone in your business that embodies that growth mindset, that's willing to
Mm.
go on that journey and willing to be open about this as well, to be able to go, hey, listen, this is where I'm truly great, where
Mm.
you're going to get me at my absolute best.
Mm.
Here's the areas where I'm just not as excited.
Mm.
I could maybe do it, but am I the right person to do it? And I think that that helps be able to promote things like delegation. It's able to promote that sense of uniqueness.
Mm.
So if we're talking about things like um, diversity, equity, and inclusion,
Mm.
being able to kind of go, look, I'm just a person,
Mm.
and it's not about all about exactly the same kind of me all the way
Mm.
through. It's
Mm.
about what you're bringing. What's your experience? What's your strengths going to help our business achieve?
Mm.
So long as you have a really clear goal and purpose, people will
Mm.
connect to that.
Mm.
And that's
Mm.
where, if you've got that goal and purpose that people connect to, often, as you've said previously, through values,
Mm.
for example, you have that simpatico connection. Then you add on the strengths and skills. You've got a wave of energy and
Mm.
a wave of innovation and diverse thinking that
Mm.
can really help organizations navigate whatever's kind of going on within the world of the
Yeah.
economy and
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
increasing world of work from a people perspective.
Yeah, and then I mean then you're into AQ territory, right? Like, but more from a collective perspective, like from a
Mm,
team or an organizational point of view, because you're harnessing the individual and then ultimately collective energies that exist within the wider organization, so you can then be more adaptable
yeah.
in the way that you operate.
And I think what that also allows you to do is accept more people that are different.
Mm.
So churn will happen in every organization. So as you're bringing people in, you're being able to kind of go, what are the things, how can I help you be at your best?
Mm.
What are the opportunities that you would like to be able to grow?
Mm.
And it may well be that, as you said, you might be an accountant, but you might have developing others as a strength
Mm.
that you learn either through the recruitment process, or you might have done Strengthscope before and you're preparing for an interview. And you're kind of like, one of the other things I love to do is to help people understand us,
Mm.
help them recognize
Mm.
the added value that we bring, that we're not just numbers people or number crunchers or
Mm.
bean counters, that there's often the unfortunate and wrong way that people look at finance departments, for example. Here's the things that we can do to help you do your job better.
Mm.
Here's the information and the skills that we have that can support you. So again, that idea of skills is also transferable.
Yeah.
So it's not just about, I just need to stay in my lane and my role. Where
Yeah.
can my skills and my strengths support the wider aims of the business?
Yeah, I love that. And that, I mean, that idea around diversity is so important as well. I think,
Mm.
it's all too easy, like I was saying with the analysts, to assume that everyone does the role the same and that actually you can get into that groupthink mentality where,
So,
we're not really considering a diversity of perspectives because we're all thinking about the task outcome we're trying to achieve. But actually, when you know that you've got colleagues in the room who are representing different strength areas,
mm,
then you've got somewhere else to go inquire, right? You've got another angle to look at the same problem from, and potentially to come up with a more rounded co-created solution because you've
right.
considered the relational side, you've considered, like other people, you've considered the plan, you've thought about
Mm,
that, you've thought through like various different iterations of the problem and then come up with various different options for a solution before you move to execution. So it enables you to kind of navigate in a different way because you've got that kind of collective, diverse set of energy that can bring a different perspective.
and we're seeing so many matrixed organizations now, right?
Right.
And so you're going to have so much more of that cross-departmental project-based collaboration that it then allows you with those strengths to really fit into what those roles and responsibilities can be
Mm-hmm.
that don't necessarily just fit your role.
Mm.
That's where you've got opportunities for that strengths development, again, on that 70-20-10 model, being able to kind of turn around to your manager and go, hey, is there any projects where I could be of use, particularly bringing in my initiative skill,
Mm.
initiative strength. So being really energized about being able to get things going, be in there at the start.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be really useful, whether that's just within a department or on a wider project where you then
Mm.
see that they have, to go back to your point, qualifications and skill levels
Mm-hmm.
that allow them to operate in a different kind of space with that level of trust that this is somebody who really knows their stuff.
Mm.
They're going to come about it in a really unique way that
Yeah.
maybe other people don't expect, which is also really great because it makes people be really present. Because if they're expecting, here I am sitting for those that are listening to this podcast with a pair of glasses on, could be taken as quite geeky, and yet the experience that I often give to people in a training room is one of high energy,
Mm.
and people kind of go, "Oh wow, I didn't really expect that from you." So being able to kind of break those
Mm.
stereotypes, the great thing that strengths can also do.
Yeah, that's really, I've never heard that before. Oh, I mean, I've never heard you had that feedback before either, by the way, but like I haven't. But I love the idea that your strengths can I don't know, help you be seen in a different way to expectation. And that way you step more into your authentic self, right? You can just
Totally.
be more you and
Mm-hmm.
know how you're being more you because you're knowing what strengths you're tapping into intentionally to get more from the situation.
Exactly that, yeah.
Awesome. Um, yeah, so there's some stuff here, right, which I think we just need to bottom out,
Mm-hmm.
right? So say I've got a strength um in collaboration. I have a strength in collaboration. This is a true fact, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
as I often joke with people, collaboration is my middle name. It isn't really. I have considered changing it by default. I don't really like my middle name. I'm not going to. Anyway, this doesn't matter now. Well, that kind of does because I really am energized by collaboration, right? By finding things in common with somebody else, by taking a group and helping them find a common purpose, for example,
Right.
which is some of the stuff that we do
Mm-hmm.
professionally. I'm profoundly energized by that. I was there doing it last week, like it was a team coming together to think about their purpose, to think about the brand they want to create.
Mm-hmm.
And when they finally came up with together collectively with a bit of a framework for me, but they did it together with this kind of pithy, this is what I want. This is what we all want people to say about us when we're not in the room, and it was like this statement, and it was exactly where they wanted to take their team, newly formed team. I mean, I was bouncing around,
Right.
and they could see that. They were just like, "Oh, that's really good," because because the facilitator's happy. I mean, like, why should it matter? But at least it was feedback to them that actually they've nailed something really important, and I was getting huge energy from that. So say I've got that collaboration strength, and I
Mm-hmm.
want to take it to the next level from a skills point of view. I'd be much more excited to do that than if you were asking me to hone and polish my efficiency drainer
Right.
um, by attending a project management course, right? So
Mm-hmm.
collaboration, I love. Efficiency, I don't. And I will want to break out of a plan at the earliest possible opportunity, even a plan I have designed. There is nothing sensible about this, but it's there, right? It's this feeling of hemmed inness. So I just wonder two things actually.
Mm-hmm.
What do I actually do practically about the performance gap potentially there because I have a lack of energy for planning, right? What
Mm-hmm.
do I do about that? Um, and that's the first question. So I'm going to ask you a double barrel question. I'll bring us back if I need to.
Sure.
And the second thing is, if I want to do something different, I've just talked about an example of my collaboration strength, right? In its
Yeah.
pop. But if I want to take it to the next level, whatever that means, my context changes, I want to develop it, actively develop it. What does it actually look like from a skills perspective? So there's two things there, right? If I've got a skill gap, how do I plug it? And if I want to take a strength to the next level from a skill perspective, how do I do it?
Yeah. Really great. Let's talk trainers first.
Mm-hmm.
My personal experience is find the minimum that you need to do to survive. because
Mm,
I, for example, was in a sales role for a short period of time.
mm,
Was taught very much about influencing and persuading. And persuasiveness is one of my drainers in my
mm.
strength scope. And I remember getting feedback, and then they were really great. And they said, "Look, tell you what, we'll send you an influencing and persuading 2-day course."
Mm,
And that makes sense to an extent. From a deficit mentality,
mm.
is give them more of the stuff that they're not necessarily energized by. But the flip of that is that because I wasn't energized by it, I think I sat down and my self improvement kicked in, and I got
Yeah.
understanding of like Cialdini's levers of persuasion.
Mm,
But then after that, particularly the practical side, I didn't want to persuade.
mm,
It doesn't energize me. So I kind of moved away, kind of going, right, I know the theory, but I'm still not energized by the application
mm,
of it. So a lot of the time when it's a drainer, is there somebody that can support you?
mhm,
And what other strengths can you use to get the outcome that you're
mm,
looking for? So if I think about the fact that if I was to go back into a sales role, I wouldn't be trying to lean on persuasiveness as a strength because I'd
yeah.
get drained by it.
Yeah.
Instead, what I'd probably do is I'd probably use collaboration,
Mhm,
which is a shared strength that we have, to be able to kind of, again, diffuse any conflict and find what our common goal is.
mm,
Then I'd probably use developing others to educate them as to how the product I'm selling is going to help them.
mhm,
Probably a bit of strategic mindedness strength to try and keep it big picture
mhm,
rather than worry too much about the details. And then I'd probably use my leading strength
mm.
to be able to try and close it.
I
So,
mean,
so,
that's
so, so, so it's about being able to,
yeah.
from a strengths perspective, and trying to develop skills. It's about recognizing how can I get energy, and then what's that telling me about the areas that I need to then develop. And what are
Yeah.
those the frameworks that I can do? If
Mhm.
somebody's got a drain on efficiency, for example, is there an app for that? Is
What
there
for
an app?
efficiency? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
is it time management? Is it being
yeah,
able to quickly put together a project plan, for example? There's
yeah.
stuff that can stop you being in that training area for too long.
Mm,
I guess when we talk about developing skills in areas where we already have strength,
mhm,
it really comes down to context
mhm.
because you can, if you love collaboration, you can go to the TED Talks website and immerse yourself in all different kinds
Yeah.
of collaboration. So it's about really honing into, again, what is the outcome that I'm looking for in terms of developing this strength?
Mm,
Not just developing it for the sake of it. So if you're wanting to develop your collaboration in order to be able to allow projects to move more efficiently,
mhm,
then I think there's two things that you can do. First of all, think about what other strengths can combine in a similar ways that we just talked about the
mm,
drain. Are there other strengths that can complement that and kind of just compartmentalize
mm,
and optimize the use of that collaboration in combination?
mm,
And I guess as well, it's about going and finding
mm,
where there are opportunities. And again, do you really need it? Because sometimes we all have negativity bias, right?
mm,
That's that natural way that negative events or negative thoughts have much more psychological weight for us
mm,
than positive. So we will often see our strengths as, oh, but that often gets in the way. Does it really? Ask people
mm.
the other thing. So
Yeah.
don't waste your time going and kind of setting yourself up for essentially, although as someone with self improvement, don't think further learning is ever wasted. But if you're wanting to really optimize your time and
Mm,
productivity, then check in with other people. Is my collaboration helping here? What
mm,
would you like more of? How would you like me to collaborate in a
mm,
different
mm,
way? And it may be that they don't have collaboration and actually they're feeling a bit drained by it. But again, Strengthscope in particular is used as a lens for conversation.
mm,
Understand your ways of working. Then you will naturally be able to adjust the way that you're using your collaboration to
mm,
make it more optimal rather than developing it into some sort of massive mega mind of strengths where you've got all of the things in your head.
mm, mm.
Instead, focus down on what's right in front of you. What do you need to
Yeah,
do?
right. So, you know, I was just thinking about my personal context,
Mm,
as you were talking there, and where my collaboration strength might be usefully upskilled. And it's
mm-hmm,
probably in the development and maintenance and sustaining of strategic partnerships, right? Strategic collaborations between Strengthscope and other organizations.
Yeah.
Um, and there may well be some skill-based stuff to do there, right? There may well be some knowledge that I can acquire or some practice that I can develop that will help with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I would really, like I said, as I was asking the question or formulating the question in my head, I would actually I would be attracted to going and doing that skills-based development because it's going to help me collaborate even more effectively with a new kind of end goal in mind. And it's building on a strength. So
Yeah.
kind of why would I not want to, right? Like if I want to be able to collaborate, but now in a different way, in a different context, in the mega way you're talking about, Robert, it's with a very specific application, then I would want to go find that. And I love what you said about the efficiency trainer, find an app. Yes, because like table stakes. I don't want to spend forever in a diminishing returns way
Exactly.
on a project management course and then another thing and then another thing and another thing. But if you said to me, how can you upskill in an area that you already have energy in? Yeah, I probably would bite your hand off because I'd be thinking I can create more value by doing that and it would feel good too. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was good.
I guess with your particular thing, just really quickly,
Yeah.
my question would be, why is it collaboration in that particular area? Or is it something that's allowing your collaboration to come out even more? So are you looking to develop more of that understanding of, for example, the markets that your strategic partners are
Yeah,
working in
yeah, yeah,
to allow you to collaborate, to allow your collaboration to flourish? You're not
yeah.
actually developing your collaboration, you're just giving it space to work at its best.
That's good. I mean, I love that too, because you're kind of going outside of it and going, yeah, how could you enable your collaboration to
Mm-hmm.
be more effectively deployed? Maybe there's some stuff that you need to know or do differently that would enable that. So that's kind of looking at it from a different angle entirely, which kind of comes back to something that we often talk about, I think, with Strengthscope. If you have space to explore those ideas with someone else,
Yeah.
could be your line manager, if you're employed in an organization, it could, yeah, or it could be a colleague in a team, or it could be anyone, a significant other, right? Just somebody in your life where you can just bounce those ideas around and get a different point of view. Um, that's really helpful because otherwise you end up potentially with quite a linear focus because you've always done collaboration a certain way
Yeah.
and you've got results. Why not just carry on doing that? But actually, if you then have other input from other places,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then go reflect on it, that can really help in terms of you
Yeah.
picking the right path developmentally.
But it all has to start with that awareness of strengths. If you don't have that,
Yeah,
you're kind of fishing in the dark a little bit.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. You touched on this earlier, right? And I just want again to kind of just go there because I think it's important because this does come up for us quite a lot with Strengthscope. So we're quite often asked by clients, can you map skills to strengths?
Mm.
Um, so what skills should we were just talking about? What skills should I develop that makes sense for me to try and develop given the strengths that I have? Is there an algorithm? Is there a way? Is there something that we could come up with that would enable that to be possible, right? Is it even possible to do that matrix idea where you've got skills, strengths, where they cross over, that's where you should go and do some work.
Well, I think the first place is to look at the report. And I think that with a lot of these kind of psychometric assessment based reports, people kind of take the headlines and then walk away.
Hmm.
And one of the things that we've been talking about, particularly with practitioners and specifically internally as well, because it's easy to take strengths for granted because they come so naturally.
Hmm.
But then it's easy to not have a deeper look at your strengths. And even just within our report, we've got one page on what we call our significant 7 strengths.
Hmm.
And these are the highest rated strengths out of all 24 strengths that we monitor. And on that page, there is so much information
Hmm.
that you can glean. You've got the definition of the strength, and there's some keywords in there that you can then link to and kind of go, okay, so with my creativity, problem solving, innovation, let's have a look
Hmm.
into that. Where are their skills? Where are there different contexts in
Hmm.
which I can try and test this out and build more strengths application
Hmm.
in those areas? And then you've also got the examples of what it looks like when it's at its best.
Mm.
So again, being able to think back to, okay, so when have I used that really, really well? How can I think about how I take that to the next level? Did
Mm.
I get any feedback about how my strengths work then?
Mm.
And we've got our 360 tool that you can go back and look at. And, and I know that you and I, because we love this stuff, are going to be talking about, I've done about 3 or 4 Strengthscope leader
Mm.
reports. And being able to look over time, what have I learned? Where have I adapted my strength effectively?
Mm.
Where have I still got areas to be able to get more out of, say,
Mm.
my developing other strengths within Strengthscope?
Mm.
It's clear to see for a lot of clients
Mm.
that I work with and use very, very clearly. How can I use that more
Mm.
effectively as a leader of the management team within
Mm.
Strengthscope, for
Mm.
example, around our culture? So being able to kind of recognize how we're able to do that. Now, first of all, because we're more than a report, we have Strengths Portal, which is where people take their assessment and are able to download the report pretty much instantaneously.
Mm.
We've also got essentially almost like an algorithm there,
Mm.
where there's a set of courses that start
Mm.
with know your strengths, so you understand the elements of the report, and then that then unlocks what's called Goal Wizard,
Mhm.
which allows you to think about, okay, where do I want to use my strengths? What do I want to use them toward?
Mm.
You answer questions based on your own personalized report, and at the end of that, you get a strengths plan. But then you also unlock our coaching tips course, where
Mm.
you actually then give tips of the particular strengths that have been chosen
Mhm.
and ideas for how to take them to the next level. And at the very least, what that does is that inspires people to go searching,
Mm.
you know? And that's where then you're able to kind of think about that 70-20-10 rule, because
Mhm.
that's the format that we use. Is so like, here's some suggestions about how you can bring this into your work.
Mm.
Here's some suggestions about how to approach somebody that
Mm.
might have a similar strength that would be able to, again, give you a wider understanding about
Mm.
how that strength can be used. And then here's just some places to go and read and watch and ingest that might again bring you some
Mm.
further inspiration. But I think the big thing is, you know, it's recognizing the individual's their own algorithm.
Mm. Yeah.
If you want to be able to map your skills to your strengths,
Mhm.
that's the way to do it. I think that doing that on a role level can lead to not inclusion.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily say exclusion,
Mhm.
but I think that what happens is if people purely look at trying to map competencies to what energizes people,
Mm.
you are losing a lot of what those energies, that human element, could bring to a
Mm.
role. So we can kind of, and we do work with people to try and connect competencies, leadership principles, for example, to
Mhm.
some of the strengths as examples.
Mm.
But we would never say hard and fast, this skill and this strength go together.
Mm. Because everyone's going to do it or can do it uniquely their way based on their own strengths, right? As we've
Yeah,
talked about with, if you think about the outcome you're trying to achieve, there's plenty of ways to skin that particular outcome cat.
absolutely. Absolutely. It's a mixing desk in the music studio,
Yeah, yeah,
you know?
yeah.
You use your strengths, you push them up. So if you're wanting to get people dancing, you'd push up the bass. If you want to get
Mm.
people listening to a ballad, you push up the treble. And it's similar with strengths. Okay, I want to be able to bring my creativity here because I need to do that. Oh, but I need some collaboration to do that really, really effectively.
Mm.
Really, I've got the idea. Now I need to get down to making it work practically. So maybe that's where some common sense strength about being
Mm.
practical, pragmatic might come in. Am I the person to do that, or do I get somebody else?
And
And
there's
that's how
something,
you build it.
yeah, and there's something in what you just said, which I think supports what you were saying earlier about the importance of this being kind of drip fed. This is something about building practice. It's repeat, but it's also continue to return
Mm-hmm.
to your wheel, to your strengths, to keep thinking about how can I combine in ways that I've not done before, right? And just to be reminded of this all the time, because if you're not doing that, then you can get stuck in patterns of behavior. Not that they won't be functional and they won't be working for you, but they're not necessarily helping you to fulfill your potential or fulfill the potential of your strengths.
Yeah, and I think that the key thing that kind of links into, and again, going back to our strengths versus skills piece, is if I'm expecting to deliver a skill, I might have to go away on a 1 day training course. So say I'm away for 8 hours.
Mm.
Instead, can I take an hour per week
Mm.
over, what's that, 2 months,
Mm.
incrementally build this practice? And then I think actually what you see is it's absorbed in the right way and it has that longer term effect,
Can you
has that
imagine?
proper change effect as well, rather than I've passed an exam. Thank
Mm.
you. I now don't need to look at that again because I've got the qualification.
It's so radical as an idea, right? It's that what you just said, it's so simple, because it's the same amount of time,
Mm-hmm.
but it's cut up in a different way with a different aim in mind and is highly likely to be more effective than just that, as you said before, one and done approach where you kind of you get the badge of attainment, but you haven't actually embedded or built practice or built the muscle
Mm-hmm.
around, coming back. And it is that repetition and that, that kind of repeat use that is really going to bring people back again and again and again and help them build that sense of um, confidence and competence that
Yes.
this is going to be useful to them so that it feels good to go there because actually there may be more to learn because of what I already learned. So
Right.
let me do that. Let me keep doing that. Give me some time to do that. Fascinated. I think that's a whole different conversation actually around how you build that strengths practice into those hours that you might want to take at work when your line manager says that's okay, signed
Mm-hmm.
off, um, so that you do use that time effectively, right? Even
Yep.
though it's only an hour, what are you going to do? Because an hour is a long time, right? If so what are you going to do with that hour? I think, yeah, let's talk about that another
And
time.
I think, L&D professionals are being asked to do team development workshops, which, used to be well, way back. So let's take them away for 5 days to a country home and we'll team build and stuff like that. Now they're getting an hour to try and get the same outcomes.
Yeah.
Well, now we can kind of think about what are those outcomes that we can achieve in many increments of those hours.
Mm,
What's the overall goal that we're trying to do in time?
mm,
And something that stays effective, that
mm,
gets baked into cultures of
mm,
teams that allow them to really kind of transform the way they operate, communicate, and get results together.
I love that. And I think actually what you'd see from that one day and then evaluate over time in terms of embedding and that making a measurable difference over time versus that drip feed 1 hour a week for a certain number of weeks would just be that work must be starting now. Like, there's going to be people that I think we should go down the same road. We're setting our own research agenda to just check that and make sure that that actually is a really, but on the face of it, it's got to be more effective because it just helps people kind of go from that unconscious incompetence, right? Where they're just
Exactly.
not even aware of what they don't know
Exactly.
through conscious competence, which feels a bit uncomfortable. But you kind of have to break through that, lean into that discomfort, and then it becomes habit, and you're flying, and you don't even know that you've learned a completely different way of doing something until you're asked a set of questions, and then you realize, oh yeah, I'm good at that now.
Yeah.
Like, and that's completely different from how I used to do it. Fabulous. Thank you, Scott. I really appreciate you taking the time. I loved that conversation about strengths and skills. I think for me, it brought a new perspective on a topic that has been long discussed. And yeah, I look forward to, that conversation evolving. I think as AI becomes more and more prominent, it's going to need to, and I think it's going to become more and more present as a conversation for people. So for now, I would like to say thank you very much again, and we shall leave it there. If you're interested in hearing more from Scott, then as I've said before, search for AQ on the resources section of the Strengthscope website, and you'll find the other podcast that Scott and I recorded a while back. I think it was about 18 months ago we did that.
Mm-hmm.
We were different people then, I think that will be, we can tell,
Yeah.
from this back.
I'd say so.
You have, as ever, been a wonderful human. So until next time, stay strong.
Thank you.